Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Blue Bounty Hunter channel. Now, Darth Vader was the tall, menacing Sith Lord that served under the Emperor during the Galactic Civil War. But did you know that Darth Sidious specifically designed his suit to make it as painful and excruciating as physically possible? Well, today in this video, I'll be exploring his injuries, suit, and what made the suit so miserable. So I'm actually going to start off with a brief description of Darth Vader, and in case any of you are not familiar with the origins of literally the main character of Star Wars, Vader, originally known as Anakin Skywalker, was a 9-year-old human slave under Watto that was found by Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn and taken to the Jedi Temple to become a practicer of the Force. And after Qui-Gon was killed in a duel against the Sith Lord Darth Maul, his apprentice Obi-Wan Kenobi went on to train the young child, and over the next decade, the two had a strong, yet admittedly rough attachment to each other as master and apprentice. And right as the Separatists seceded from the Republic, and the Republic took in the clone forces from Kamino, making the Grand Army of the Republic, causing the Clone Wars to begin, Anakin fell in love with the former Queen of Naboo, who he met 10 years earlier, Padme Amidala. They became married, and at the end of the war, Anakin allowed his love and attachment to Padme to twist him to the dark side, making him Darth Vader. And as a Sith, he would go on to destroy the Jedi alongside his master, Darth Sidious, bringing an end to the era of the Clone Wars, as well as a beginning to the era of the Galactic Empire. And after the Jedi Purge commenced, Anakin traveled to the lava planet of Mustafar, where he killed the former Separatist leaders, and after Padme arrived to plead with him, Anakin force-choked her in a fit of rage, beginning a duel between the new Sith and his old master, Obi-Wan Kenobi. And the fight ended with Obi-Wan cutting Vader up into pieces, mutilating him so that his 3 remaining limbs now lie in the lava below. After this, Vader caught fire, and Kenobi watched as the body of his former apprentice and friend began to melt away. But Darth Sidious arrived later at Mustafar to save Vader, bringing him back to Coruscant after discovering that he was still alive. And this was where he had his surgery to transform him into the monster we all know and love. And now I'm actually going to go over every major injury that Vader got during his accident, as you could call it. And Vader sustained multiple horrific injuries to his body during the fire, which required extreme medical assistance to keep him alive. And by the time the medical droids began working on his resurrection, Vader had lost all of his limbs, 3 to Kenobi, and 1, his right arm, to Darth Tyrannus, or Count Dooku, many years earlier at the beginning of the Clone Wars. The former Jedi received 4th-degree burns, which disintegrated his hair and Jedi robes, and also burned through much of his skin. Throughout the fire, his retinas as well as corneas were damaged, and his eardrums were burned, which basically meant that he couldn't hear anymore, and his lungs were also significantly damaged, causing him the inability to breathe for much longer. I just cannot imagine not only burning alive, but then also having your eyesight, hearing, and breathing slowly be destroyed. And it just really puts a new light on his character that kind of makes you feel bad for him. That is, ignoring the whole youngling murder thing. That wasn't too cool, if I'm being honest. But on top of everything else, he also suffered much damage to his internal organs and respiratory system. But now I'm actually going to go over how his suit worked and how it kept him alive after all of those injuries. And his armor consisted of 10 protective layers, including Durasteel, Plasteel, and Obsidian, which protected him from blaster fire and weak or indirect lightsaber strikes. It also gave Vader new cybernetic limbs so that he could walk and use his arms. Also, his boots could magnetically seal, allowing him to walk in a vacuum or theoretically on walls. And we don't really see this in the movies or anything else. I mean, obviously not the movies, but even in the comics, we don't really get to see this. And if I'm wrong, you can correct me in the comments. But this is pretty cool that he could basically just walk around in space and up walls and stuff. So I feel like that would be pretty interesting to see. And in total, Vader was 6 feet and 8 inches, with the suit weighing a total of 265 pounds, including his weight. And if you're not American, you're probably really mad right now. And basically in the metric system, that is 120 kilograms or 2.03 meters. Vader required a breathing apparatus as well as a vocabulator due to his damaged vocal cords, and he had an air pump which gave oxygen to his damaged lungs. And it is kind of crazy that really his body was just destroyed so much in the fire that he had to have all of these implants and machines keeping him alive at all times. And Vader's life support system was controlled on his chest plate and belt, where 3 slot-like data ports were present for information. Also, his suit had a controlled temperature, allowing him to operate on planets like Hoth and Tatooine with ease. So it is pretty chill that he was able to just have the temperature of his armor whatever he wanted it to be at all times. And also, I'm sure many of you have always wondered what his chest piece did, and well, now you know. His eye pieces filtered out any unnecessary light to protect his damaged retinas and corneas. Also, the lenses allowed him to see infrared and ultraviolet light, which let him see in the dark. Information was also shown to Vader on his eyepieces, which informed him of the planet's atmosphere and other important data. And you can actually see this in Revenge of the Sith when he puts his helmet on for the first time. He also had a heart monitor, which would send wavelengths to his heart whenever it was beating too slow or irregularly, making it to go back to normal. And this basically just looked like this metal implant right next to his heart that obviously helped him out quite a good bit. Vader could eat through feeding tubes in his mask, providing him with all the nutrients he required, and the Vita paste that he consumed tasted so bad that he ended up connecting the tubes directly to his stomach for consumption. The stumps that remained of his limbs were fitted with neural links between his brain and muscles that allowed him to move his mechanical limbs. Also, the limbs were equipped with hinges that allowed him to move his joints in a somewhat human-like way. So while most of his limbs were pretty normal in the idea that he could, use them like a person, his right glove from Legends was actually indestructible and came from Skir Khan. And you can actually see this when he used it against Han Solo in Cloud City, when Han was shooting at him and he deflected the blaster bolts off of his right hand. Vader also kept a spare of his suit at all times in case the original was damaged, which helped him in battles and other dangerous situations. And he also had a meditation chamber basically everywhere, which allowed him to remove his helmet. So he really just had a very complex and, machine-based suit that he needed at all times to help him survive. And really, those meditation chambers were kind of like the only break he could ever get from just the constant agony he was in. While his suit did obviously have some advantages, making him taller and also stronger, as you're about to see, it also had some disadvantages that made it extremely uncomfortable. And actually, during the surgery for his transformation, Vader was given no anesthesia, leaving him in excruciating pain during his reconstruction. His boots were so heavy that he basically had to learn to walk and always had a slight lean forward. And imagine you just get injured so bad that you literally have to learn how to walk again. And that really just goes to show how bad of a situation he was in. And Sidious purposefully gave Vader low quality armor in order to ensure he was never in control and always in a state of pain and hatred. Also, many sharp needles were used around his body to interface his suit to his skin, as well as collect data, and the tiny needles poke him everywhere, including the top of his spine and even his face. So he basically had spikes poking into him at all times. Also, the fabrics and armor on his body constantly rubbed on his skin, causing him severe pain and discomfort, on top of the fact that the Emperor made everything he wore slightly the wrong size so that it would never fit the right way. And while his damaged ears were improved with the helmet, which allowed him to pick up sound waves through sensors in his ears, it also caused him to constantly overload with the amount of different sounds being picked up, making it even harder for him to function. And also, apparently, the quality of the ear transplants were not very good, so basically all the audio that he heard sounded like it was coming from underwater, and the loud rasp of his breathing made it nearly impossible to sleep. And when he could sleep, it was a jumbled nightmare of old memories and guilt. So add insomnia onto all of his other problems, and it is kind of crazy that, like, on top of all this other agony and pain that he has to endure, he can't even really sleep. And actually, the only place that he really could sleep was in his meditation chambers, so I guess there's that. The fact that he needs this complex machine just to sleep is pretty crazy. And when it comes to combat, he could barely lift his arms over his head because of his armored plating and a heavy cape, which made it difficult for him to fight with lightsabers or really just against any kind of enemies altogether. So his fighting ability was definitely reduced because of this. And it's also noted that they could have used the same technology they used to make General Grievous, which actually happened before Darth Vader, but Sidious purposefully chose not to make sure it was as low quality as possible and that he was always uncomfortable and not in a really good state. So he really did just keep him as this monster that was constantly under his control and constantly, in pain. And this actually made him a very powerful Sith because he was always, using the dark side of the Force due to his suffering. So yeah, I really did just kind of want to talk about how complex his suit was, and really all the different things that made it as uncomfortable and painful as possible. But anyway, that's it for this video. You can subscribe if you want to. I upload every Sunday at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But yeah, see ya.